I've been on my own, yeah, I've lived in these spots for too long. Shadows and windows and doors, I don't know where to go. If I take your hand, will you show me? Will you show me? Will you, round and around, you're facing yours and your light keep on circling. And the sudden, you're painting white flowers and walls that I thought fell down. And if you knew you could break my heart anytime, would you do it? Would you do it? Yeah.
Welcome back, Soul Tribe, to David Berry 75's channel. I'm your guest reader, Toni, and if you'd like to guest read, please contact David either by email or go ahead and contact him in Discord. And today is the last chapter. All right, so chapter 18, General Overview. Through the study of Hermeticism, we can see how Sapiens loses the best in his life by not being able to obtain really lasting values for himself. The happiness he seeks slips from his hands, and only the passing joy of a moment of pleasure remains. Understanding of this phenomenon generally converts the individual into a materialistic cynic who whose main belief is that things must be enjoyed while it is possible, as after this life there is no other. This really is the goal most sought after by people. To have a good time, nevertheless, little by little, the experience, and as the years go by, the individual realizes that he has not attained happiness. For even if he has had a good time, those moments have been followed by others of pain, suffering, and internal emptiness. Generally, people think they are lacking something specific in their lives, which will make them happy, and that when they obtain it, they will be happy. When they obtain their desires and continue to be as unhappy as before, they become more materialistic and unfeeling every day, or deliver themselves over to an unreal philosophical or religious mysticism. There is nothing more daunting than taking stock of what has been gained in life beyond sustenance, suffering, enjoyment, or what one has done for his fellow men. The naive person can easily fill the credit column with his professional titles, his material possessions, wealth, family, or knowledge obtained. Nevertheless, the cold reality is that the individual is not the owner of anything unless he is certain that what he possesses will endure. Under ordinary circumstances, he can only make a list of the things life has given him to handle, and even in this case, he does not know when this mandate will expire. In truth, the individual only gets out of life for himself what he can keep indefinitely beyond death. Obtaining something for oneself means having a purpose in life. It means taking possession of something intimate and personal, which is, after all, the fruit of life. Everyone should ask himself, what have I obtained from life? Is it sufficient just to go along with what life brings? Do I really possess what I believe I have obtained, or will it vanish tomorrow like a soap bubble? Many may think that this kind of reasoning is very selfish, but we must consider that gaining nothing from oneself is just as foolish, or more so, than excessive selfishness. To give everything away for the air we breathe, and for the food and the well-being necessary to keep the body alive may be very romantic and poetic, but it's extremely inconvenient, as this represents eternal slavery. Eternal is meant in the cosmic sense of time, which compared to the terrestrial is really unending. This can be verified through dreams, for during an instant of time, the individual has access to the cosmic time, and it is for this reason that in 30 terrestrial seconds, one may dream the summary of a whole lifetime, from birth to death. The same concept may also be applied to the eternal torment of the fires of hell. Many people laugh at Hermeticism, occultism, and all things esoteric, but generally, none of them have had any direct experience in the matter, and only speak from hearsay or prejudice. Some are intellectually proud and use their reasoning to discredit Hermeticism. It is hoped that those who reason that way are absolutely and completely certain of their reasoning and do not fall into any of the following categories of flawed critical thinking. Those who believe themselves awake but are really dreaming. Those who blindly imitate, placing implicit faith in other people, systems, or institutions to avoid thinking for themselves. Those whose passions take the place of reason. They draw a line in advance and will accept no reason of their own or of others. that is not within this line, but leaning towards what flatters their state of mind, vanity, or interest. Those that adore their own ideas are as sacred images. Our ideas have belonged to us from the time immemorial, and we are unaware of how these ideas are subtly insinuated into our brain. They never allow anyone to contradict or discredit them. We must not forget that the main part of the individual reasoning generally consists of finding a reason to continue believing what he already believes. Others will blindly deny their possible dependence on a central computer, arguing that they do as they please. They do not realize that they desire what the central computer makes them desire. It is sufficient to analyze individual motivation in depth to understand that everything takes place under the internal or external pressure. Ideas, feelings, impulses, or actions are always compulsive. They are never born from an act of superior or free reasoning. The usual reason for upholding the idea of one's own freedom consists in the argument of showing a long list of all things accomplished in life. Nevertheless, it should be asked, were these things done by our own desires, or were we obliged to do them in spite of ourselves? Do we desire a certain thing, or were we obliged to desire it? There are very few simple reflections which should lead by individual who meditates on them to reach the conclusion that sapiens' scale of value is tremendously distorted. Here are some of those reflections. Science does not bring true happiness to the human being. It only provides comfort, pleasure, and technology. Intelligence does not develop or form content in a person. The internal nature of the human being has not appreciably evolved during the course of history. Man has no knowledge of the greater portion of his internal nature. The human species has no one with whom to compare itself, only animals. Therefore, they have no point of reference for their own worth or their real position in the cosmic scale. Each person must reach his own conclusions on these thoughts. It is necessary to consider that Hermeticism is not solely dedicated to showing how bad sapien is or how insignificant he is, but that it has a well-defined plan for the human race, pointing out the real position of sapiens as a small animal of little importance is the face of universal grandeur, and whose only value is that he possesses the divine spark, has a creative and not a destructive objective. We attempt to encourage a person through reflection to see the unbarred cell in which he lives, as this is the only way that the desire to escape will be born in him. While an individual believes that all is well and that he himself is very well, there will be no possibility of real evolution. This is the reason why many mystics suddenly feel spiritually restlessness after having gone through tremendous painful experiences, which come as a positive shock, awakening them from the somnambulistic lethargy. The object of suffering is not is to awaken the individual's consciousness. Nevertheless, there are many so deeply asleep that suffering only brutalizes them further and is absolutely unproductive. There are many who have a purely devotional attitude towards Hermeticism, thinking that it is sufficient to be very spiritual to progress along the path, and that these spiritual individuals, according to their own opinion, will be best prepared to ascend to higher levels. They believe that progress is attained by a kind of contact with heaven or within the occult powers, and that it is sufficient to sacrifice oneself by serving mankind in order to obtain everything. In truth, the great disadvantage of Hermeticism lies in the fact that it is the path of the pure intelligent, and if the student does not develop his intelligence and awareness to the required levels, no evolution is possible. Another enormous obstacle for people is that it is necessary to work very hard, as Hermeticists is the path of self-salvation. And out of laziness and indulgence, one does not wish to save himself. People refer to being saved by Christ, even if they should only be a figment of their deluded brain, or to be saved by magic or by the crew of a flying saucers. One of the reasons people do not make a decision to save themselves is because they have no idea what they have to be saved from, believing that on earth everything is just as it seems. Professional occultists or internal students of esotericism live in the hope of one day finding someone who will open their third eye. For example, in the belief that therein resides all magical secrets. For them, we would say that the third eye only gives them a vision of the human being's energy projections without even remotely offering them any spiritual progress or advancement. Furthermore, we must mention and purely symbolic nature of the supposed operation of the opening of the third eye, under which Lobsang Rapa hid the true mystery of what the Hindus called Maya Varupa, whose most approximate translation is the path of illusion. The fabulous unicorn, the mystical animal with the horn on its forehead, represents what we are referring to. One who wants to act with his third eye must develop a horn in the middle of his forehead. Much has been made of unfolding in the belief that control of this indicates a higher degree of spiritual evolution. And nothing is further from the truth. It is easy to unfold within an extract of cannabis indica without any spiritual merit whatsoever. Unfolding is no more than a dangerous exercise and is extremely fatiguing. We must add that it has never been known if the visions that the operator sees when unfolded or with his third eye are really true or only mirages of cosmic ether. The internal aphorism, as above so below, confirms that the fact is, if we can so frequently deceive ourselves in the physical world using the senses we freely control, there is no more likelihood to deceive ourselves upon using such difficult and restricted faculties. The real importance of unfolding is something we have spoken little about, and which could be hermetic unfolding. This consists of being conscious simultaneously on two planes, physical and spiritual, in heaven and on earth. It is thus that the Hermeticist rise above himself upon becoming divided into two persons, both of which simultaneously have their eyes open. It is said that in this way the Hermeticist obtains the power of powers, which is uniting earth with heaven. Of this state, we will describe just one phenomenon, which is very curious and incomprehensible to the ordinary individual, and that is to simultaneously perceive two extremes. If this can be understood, the individual will be sad and happy at the same time simultaneously. Pleasure and pain, serenity and agitation, attraction and repulsion, and life and death are experienced at the same time. It must not be believed that this experience produces an average without differentiation. On the contrary, this gives absolute understanding and experience of each of these states without the negative repercussions which good or evil extremes may produce. When we mention this, it is not with the intention that this should be easily understood, but rather sensed. Admirers of yoga give tremendous importance to Kundalini and the chakras, believing them to be the fundamental pillar of spiritual fulfillment. The truth is that no benefit would be gained by a person through the touted awakening of Kundalini, except perhaps an intense creative euphoria that has nothing to do with spiritual progress. We must understand the true evolution cannot be improvised in any way, and that no one in the universe can obtain it without a slow, sustained, and vigorous process of self-fulfillment. There are those who pursue magical powers, such as clairvoyance, with tremendous perseverance, without stopping to think whether it's really beneficial to them or not. As an example, one of the easiest things to attain is what is commonly called second sight. For this, we will give the method, although we honestly trust that no one will use it. To obtain second sight, it is sufficient to become a medium and endeavor to develop mediumistic faculties, easily done by the means of the collective suggestion, which takes place during seances. Upon becoming a medium, the individual becomes clairvoyant very rapidly, and he is possessed by what we may call controlling spirits of a lower nature. Traditionally, in classic occultism, these are called astral shells. They are the bestial principles of individuals which survive for some time after death, and which need to absorb and feed on the magnetic energy from living beings, producing a type of vampirism. The medium is taken over by these astral shells, and they project to his imagination all that they themselves have seen in the world of the dead. However, they charge a high price for their work as they absorb the energy of the medium who is left exhausted, generally ending up contracting leukemia or some other element which science cannot cure. There is an interesting case of an ex-medium who managed to infiltrate a new group of people who did not believe in spiritualism. He related to them his spectacular vision, during which they appeared prehistoric beings who spoke to him. In a short while, 5 or 6 of the group were seeing things similar to this for the first time in their lives. This is an example of magnetic contagion. Many who have obtained powers of great riches scoff at spiritual things, alleging that there is nothing their money cannot buy, despising the philosopher, believing he has something to sell. Protected by their wealth, they believe they have attained the pinnacle of their ambitions. Unfortunately, they do not understand that beyond a certain limit, there is nothing their money can buy, not even material pleasures, and that the effort of retaining their possessions consumes all their energy. How many modern Croesus types are able to acquire a new stomach at any price, one that will enable them to again enjoy gastronomic pleasures, or perhaps are unable to restore their worn out sexual energy in order to possess the woman they desire. It is ironic that they cannot enjoy what the most humble laborer is able to have. One of the most comforting things in life is to contemplate the expectation to this rule. And in the case of those who use their wealth for truly significant social work, and for those which they will most certainly receive a prize from the Lords of Destiny in a future reincarnation. It is true that by means of good works, the sins of the individual are forgotten. It is necessary to clarify that the Hermeticist, sin as it is commonly known, does not exist. There is the law of cause and effect, and the occult judges who judge and punish people according to their individual responsibility group them into 4 categories: the illiterate human masses, the middle class, the great scientists, outstanding professionals, philosophers and leaders, and the initiates. The occult judges punish the individual according to his responsibility. They consider the responsibility of the first category to be practically nil. That of the second category, slightly higher. The third has a lot of responsibility. And the fourth, the initiates, are considered absolutely responsible. Therefore, should they stray from the correct path, they receive the worst possible punishment, as they have acted with their eyes open. This penalty may even be the violent physical elimination of the individual, or being demoted in future incarnations. It is necessary to point out that Hermetic science, like all that exists, may be used for good and evil. It in itself is in neutral, as it is beyond good or evil, but some of its rules may become known and used erroneously. It is for this reason that white magic and black magic are always differentiated, as we have already mentioned in previous pages, and that in their manifestations, one is constructive and the other deconstructive. Speaking of black magicians, remind me of a tale like 1,001 Nights. One truth is that there are black magicians, in the worst sense of the word, who are in reality the most ferocious enemies of the stellar man, moving all kinds of forces and people in order to attack them. In contrast to stellar, we could perhaps correctly call them abysmal. Many of the black magicians know the strangest secrets to resist death. Alexander David Neal relates in one of her books on Tibet the horrible case of some indescribable ancient priest who stayed alive by feeding on live men who had to die slowly in a special sarcophagus on top of the remains of others who had died before in the same place. In reality, they had to slowly rot to death, but for the spell to be successful, this had to be done willingly, being convinced by the priest of the extraordinary and decisive spiritual merit of a supreme confrontation with death. Count Dracula is not a simple fantasy. Hermetic tradition maintains that these beings really exist, and that many of them live hundreds of years by drinking flesh blood extracted from humans, obtaining the vitality necessary to restore their own system. It is a fact that many people practice unconscious vampirism on another level and absorb the energy of others. It is thus that machismo or matriarchy are merely forms of unconscious emotional vampirism. Within the realm of this subject, it is interesting to consider certain businessmen who, guided by animal instinct, vampires their competitors, who they gradually absorb until they are ruined and destroyed. Vampirism is such an extensive subject that we expect to cover it more in detail in a future book. The world is unaware of the terrible battles waged between stellar and abysmal men, just as with most truly important things, they remain hidden beneath absolutely different appearances. With respect to the future of mankind, we maintain that the best hope of salvation lies in the possibility of scientific establishing our theory of people's levels of consciousness. Perhaps in the near future, important advances and discoveries will occur in the field of measurement of yet undiscovered cerebral rhythms. The most important of these is the rhythm of superior awareness, which appears in people possessing a high-level awareness, the result of hermetic work upon themselves. The day this discovery becomes a scientific reality, human beings must undoubtedly be grouped according to levels of consciousness. Social and intellectual classes will disappear to give way to degrees of awareness. It is probable that in this way a scale of 1 to 10 will be established, in which 1 will represent the highest state of awareness among people and 10 the lowest. It is understood that those possessing the higher levels would be in the group which would guide mankind. They would absolutely guarantee sorry, I lost my place. They would absolutely guarantee a world free from wars, delinquency, and poverty, with an equal opportunity for all, as everyone would be able to climb the scale of awareness and someday reach level 1. Nevertheless, for the system to be justified and accepted by people, it would necessarily have to carry much more weight and scientific authority than the current system of measuring human intelligence. It would have to be the obvious result of an absolutely clear scientific verification. The theory of level of awareness and the basis of it would have to be made known in simple language so that the entire world could understand it. We guarantee that this discovery would be the greatest that man has ever invented during his existence on Earth, the only discovery capable of guaranteeing the future and happiness of the human race to a certain extent. However, at first, this would cause tremendous problems among the disqualified people. We would be very surprised to find that the majority of individuals who previously were known as superior beings, due to their great intelligence, would be classified under number 5 after measuring their level of awareness. Men who previously were great leaders might be relegated to the lowest category upon verifying without any doubt their absolute lack of state of superior alertness and internal judgment, which is the very condition from which a high level of consciousness is derived. On the other hand, simple men with minimal culture and a very elemental intelligence would possibly occupy the highest positions. In the last instance, the cerebral examination to determine the level of awareness would establish the degree of the individual's spiritual age. Translated into the concepts of evolution, wisdom, and spiritual perfection, it is thus that the world could be governed by the advisory committee of spiritual ancients, true sages, possessors of a high level of awareness and very clear internal judgment. Many people believe, based on an ancient prophecy or interpretation of supposed message contained in the pyramids or ancient documents, that the world would come to an end in the near future as a result of great catastrophe, possibly of stellar origins, disregarding the truth or error of these prophecies, we believe that human beings as the great determining factor of these phenomena, this as Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because of the extreme perversion of their inhabitants. The planet Earth is influenced in its interstellar relations by mankind's mental, emotional, instinctive, and psychological states. The behavior and the character of people's influence to a very important extent. The climate, vegetable and animal life, the telluric phenomena, any catastrophe predicted for the near future could be annulled by a decisive or important upheaval in the behavior and spiritual life of the human being. In this respect, as in any circumstance which pretends to predict the future, the Hermeticist is more interested in creating the future than in predicting it. We hope that in the nearest possible future, the scientific measure of level of consciousness will become a reality for humanity, thus signifying a new dawn for mankind. And well, Soul Tribe, this is the end of the road, and now we are going to begin a new cycle. I hope to hear or see all of you as a guest reader for David Berry's channel in the near future. There's no time limit or rush to get through a book, so you can go at your own pace. All right, so have a fantastic, favorable day, friends. I'll catch you on the flip side. This is Toni signing off. May you all live long and prosperous. Bye.
I've been on my own, yeah, I've lived in these spots for too long. Shadows and windows and doors, I don't know where to go. If I take your hand, will you show me? Will you show me? Will you, round and around, you're facing yours and your light keep on circling. And the sudden, you're painting white flowers and walls that I thought fell down. And if you knew you could break my heart in time, would you do it? Would you do it? Yeah.